Get ready for the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, your weekly breakdown of everything District 4 in the state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney, and we are joined today by the pride of the Flint Tropics, Jackie Moon.
That's right. Jackie Moon in the house. I thought it would be fitting just to introduce some boys basketball previews. And I mean, who else other than Jackie Moon? Let him run around and distract the other team for a bit.
That's right. Yeah, we were talking about this before we hopped on the air. That's Scott Burton, by the way, for those that may not know or listening audio only on IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. If you're watching the video, you'll see Scott today. He's got his Flint Tropics jersey on. Jackie Moon, of course, was the fictional character in the movie Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell. And we were talking before we hopped on. My favorite scene in the movie is they're at practice, and Will Ferrell, Jackie Moon, he's just, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I'm just gonna be a decoy on this play. I'll distract the defense. And Woody Harrelson's the coach, and he's, you run the play, Jackie Moon. And anyways,
oh my gosh, just hilarious. And that kind of stuff is, I think that silly, stupid comedy is lost on this new generation for some reason. It's, you talk about things like Dumb and Dumber, and it's like, what? I don't get it. What? Dumb and Dumber? It's like, oh, dude, that is such a classic, and they don't even know. Speaking of comedy, I'm headed up to Bill Burr tonight in Boise. Got floor seats right there, right in front of the stage. So it's going to be, it's a comedy-filled day, even though I'm sick from state football still. Thanks a lot, Paul. I told my daughters that I have all this work to do, and one of them said, Daddy, you need to eat arugula. But she said it in an English accent, so I didn't even know what that, arugula. And I was like, honey, it's green. And so that's what I've been doing, is eating green salad, calling it arugula for my daughter. And so hopefully I get better.
Arugula is trash. That might be a hot take, but I don't enjoy arugula at all. It is not good. I don't.
No,
yeah.
Not, and I'll pass, but I'll call it that just for her sake.
I'd much rather have a corn dog. I was going to ask back to Semi-Pro real quick. Do you have a similar promotion at Jerome where if the team scores, 100 points, free corn dogs for everybody in attendance? Like from
Nope, we don't. We don't. We just try to get one win at a time, Brandon. We're not gonna push the 100 points or the 5 3-pointers or anything like that, because next thing you know, we get in a situation where we're fortunate enough to be ahead. I got guys banging threes, and I don't want to send that kind of message. But we'll try to. We need to come up with something though that's a little bit more kind of grounded.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's talk about it. Let's dive right into our boys basketball preview. That's what we're doing this week here on the Magic Valley Prepcast. And let's start with Jerome and the conference that they're in, the Great Basin Conference. To me, the biggest storyline preseason and now into the regular season for this conference. And we'll talk about the preseason coaches poll and how they assess the teams. But I think the conversation has to start with Jerome. Jerome's kind of, led this conference the last couple of years, but man, devastating news in the preseason with Scotty Cook, fantastic ball handler, lead guard for Jerome, injured his knee, right, out for the season.
Yeah, he is done for the year, ACL. And he was the guy that was going to compete for State 4A Player of the Year. I mean, he would have been a 4-year varsity starter, and he's a floor general, point guard, can score, makes everybody around him better. So, the loss of him was really devastating, just because Jerome was coming off that big season where they made it to the state semifinals and dang near knocked off Pokey. But they have some young players that are stepping up right now that are so far getting the job done. It's, when we talk more about this conference, some of these young players are going to get their names noticed because they have to step up. And so far through 3 games, it's been okay.
Yeah, Skylar Maurer is still there. Keenan Blair has been another key player for Jerome early on. In the preseason coaches poll, we polled all the coaches in the Great Basin Conference. They picked Jerome to finish 4th. And so your top three, and I think the Scotty Cook news probably played into that a little bit.
Sure.
Twin Falls was picked to win the league. Big respect for Coach James Glenn and the program he's built over there at Twin. Minico was picked second. Burley was picked to finish third. Really, this and Twin Falls is the top team, Scott. They played Wood River last night and got out of there with a 2-point win. So I think Wood River is a team that maybe people are sleeping on as well.
Oh, I say this conference is so much parity and so wide open that it really could be anything. I mean, let's just go right down the top. I mean, I think Twin is the favorite. They're returning, three solid scores with Mix, Pittard, and Purcell, and those three can just flat light up the scoreboard, plain and simple. When you have that coming back and then Twin just plays fantastic defense, especially on the perimeter, they're obviously going to be the favorite. But I think that Wood River team that you just mentioned took them to the brink, lost by 2. But I mean, here's Wood River too, but everybody that they had last year that played any significant minutes is back, and you can't discount them. Juan Martinez in his second year went 3-18 his first year, but he's got everybody back. And if you know Juan, and I do, he is a player's coach. Those kids are going to do anything for that guy, and they're going to play hard, and so they've got Heitzman and Pfeiffer coming back, and those two can beat you alone, so Wood River, don't sleep on them, and you talk about, you mentioned Burley, but I think Burley is the one that really kind of fell down the ladder a little bit, because if they would have had all their pieces playing, then they would have been right there at the talk of winning the conference. But, their 6'10" Ontiveros transferred to Pokey, and Gatlin Bear didn't come out. So you've got those two pieces, and it's going to be tough. I mean, they still have Stockton, Sheets, and Trevino, but imagine if you had those two with Sheets and Trevino. I mean, Burley would be right there as a favorite to win the conference, but they don't. And so they've got some holes to fill with the lack of those two players.
Yeah. Gatlin Bear was a all-state, all-tournament, all-conference selection at Kimberly a year ago. And then he, of course, transfers to Burley. There was a video clip of him recently, Scott. Did you see this? He was in the gym doing his vertical leap, 46-inch vert. That's insane.
Wow. I mean, that kid is just one of the purest athletes that you will ever meet. And holy cow, he's got a huge future ahead of him, whatever he decides to do. That's insane.
That's basically head like at the rim. And so, and then somebody, kind of tongue in cheek said, yeah, too bad he's not, dunking a basketball at the end of that clip as well. He's just doing the vertical leap.
And Burley faithful are just going, man, I wish he would have come out, and then we wouldn't have lost Ontiveros, because, I mean, golly, that team right there, I think with those two would have a chance to compete for a title. I mean, they're just that good. Well, Hillcrest may have something to say about that, as we all know, but Burley would be the talk of the conference, I think.
Yeah, and plus Burley lost their coach, Max Stannard. He is at Twin Falls now as a teacher and I believe an assistant coach. With Coach Glenn. So
right. Well, and taking over for Burley is Brad Caras in his first year, and if you recognize that last name, Roger Caras was a long-time girls head coach for the Burley Bobcats, his dad. And when I was coaching head coach of girls basketball, Roger was the head coach for Burley. So he and I had many, many battles together. So the Caras name is not a stranger to Burley at all.
Yeah. The one team we haven't talked about yet is Minico. They were picked second in the preseason coaches poll, which is pretty fitting because they've finished second in this conference the last 3 years. What do you make of this Minico team? They always play exceptional defense under head coach Brady Trankel. Getting the ball in the basket has been a problem for them a little bit over the past couple of seasons.
Well, the thing about Minico is they really kind of junk the game up a lot. They play it a little bit slow and physical, and it's a different style whenever you play Minico. And if you're not prepared for that, they're going to cause you some problems, because they're not going to get into these track meets they are going to slow you down, and every possession is going to be crucial because you're not going to get many of them. Now, obviously, it begins and ends with Brevin Trinkle, who's the scorer, the point guard. He's a tough matchup inside and out, but they've got some pieces that can really help. I mean, Soto, Stimson, Waymans, those guys can really help offset the scoring because that's what Minico is going to need. They're going to need some help with Brevin to score the basketball. And they didn't really graduate anybody too significant from last year. So this is a team that's returning some pieces. And if they can figure out how to help Brevin score, Minico and head coach Brady Trinkle, they know how to mess a game up and throw you off your rhythm a little bit. So they're going to be in the mix as well.
Yeah, and kind of a surprising result to me from last night, Scott. So last night was kind of the opener in conference play. We talked about Twin Falls had that tight 2-point win over Wood River, but Mountain Home takes it to Minico and wins 42-31. The Tigers of Mountain Home were picked to finish last in the preseason poll. Brian Bethel is a great coach, and he's, we had him, we talked about him and his son Brandon Bethel quite a bit on the Prepcast last year. Brandon now playing football at the University of Utah, but man, Mountain Home's got a couple of big dudes in Lauren Wright and John Tetralt, and it seems like Tetralt's been there forever, but this is his final year. But what do you make of Mountain Home?
I tell you what, Mountain Home is going to be tough to beat because, like you said, the Tetralt kid is going to be a kid that can just flat get it done around the rim. And if he can get some guard help from people like Sable and Fulbright and Wright, that's going to open up things in the middle because Tetralt is a beast, and people thought, Mountain Home losing Brandon Bethel and CJ Mann, who's playing at C of I now, that the cupboard was basically empty. But Mountain Home if you can play the game around the rim, you're always going to have a chance. And they're going to have that chance with the 6'5" Tetralt. So don't sleep on them either, even though they're picked to finish last. And the one team that we haven't talked about at all is Canyon Ridge, and what a weird dynamic this is. On paper, Canyon Ridge is the best team year in and year out. I mean, they've got all the dudes, but they have an interesting scenario this year because they've got that, they have their 5th-year player in Lapumba who, played, and I think he scored 24 the other night. But, for those that aren't following that story, Canyon Ridge petitioned to get Lapumba an extra year of eligibility. So he's playing 5 years of high school sports, which is unheard of. But the caveat to all that is that he cannot play in the postseason. So here's a team in Canyon Ridge who is going to play their entire season with Lapumba being a huge part of it. And then all of a sudden, when district tournament rolls around, he can't play. So how are you going to manage that? And I think that's going to be an interesting side note as you watch Canyon Ridge develop. Now, they've got a lot of size. They've got guys that can flat out play. I mean, McIntyre, Cartwright, Brown, Robinson, Huff, Funk, all the list goes on for these guys. And that is what Canyon Ridge can do. Is they can just trot dudes out that are big and they get it done. They just need to figure out how to keep it going through an entire season because they start really fast, then they fizzle a little bit, and then they just go on this valley. They've had 2 games where they lost to Capital, and then they turn around and hang 83 on Skyline. So that's Canyon Ridge for you. So talent, absolutely. But it's going to be an interesting development to see how they pull that team together, considering the storylines that are there with that team.
Yeah. So Sam Lapumba came from a foreign country, and I don't remember which country it is off the top of my head. We're hoping to maybe get Sam on and his coach Darren Van Hofwagen to talk about this a little bit because it is something that we don't see often in Idaho. So Sam came from a foreign country, and basically was a year behind in development, right? And
from what I understood, they misplaced him because they didn't have the paperwork that they needed to place him correctly. And then, and I could be wrong, but this is what I was told. And I would love to have him on to clarify everything. But when they finally got what they needed, they realized they had misplaced him. And so they wanted to make sure that he was placed correctly, and then hence the 5th-year eligibility thing, but it doesn't include any postseason.
Yeah, so that is an interesting dynamic because you want to play him, obviously, because you want to give him that 5th year so he has a chance to continue to mature and possibly maybe play at the next level, right?
Right.
He's a big time prospect. So you want to play him so he has a chance to showcase those abilities, but at the same time, you don't want him taking too many minutes away from guys that you're going to need to count on down the stretch. So you're right. It is this tightrope that you have to maneuver. It
is. And the way this conference is set to shake up, I mean, it's going to be anybody's game. I mean, I think one game that is going to tell a lot is going to be tomorrow night, where Jerome goes over to Twin. And Jerome came out of the gates 3-0 with wins over Buhl, Ridgeview, and Kimberly last night, and going up against the conference preseason favorite. It's going to be a great measuring stick because, excuse me, some of these guys for Jerome you've never heard of before, other than Skylar Maurer and a little bit of Keenan Blair. You don't know who these kids are. You got Trey Burke, who can just flat down knock a three. 6'6" Sam Likely. Where'd he come from? I mean, he played JV last year. So, I mean, you've got one dude with any varsity experience, yet, I mean, you got Joe Messick as your coach. I mean, he's going to be able to put anything together. So I think that tomorrow night's matchup is really going to be a measuring stick for who is the top dog in this conference.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jerome off to a 3-0 start, including a win over Kimberly. That's a great way for us to segue into 3A basketball, where Kimberly is not only the defending Sawtooth Central Idaho Conference champion, but they're the defending 3A state champions. They were the 4-seeded state last year, ended up winning the title thanks to a smothering man-to-man defense that set a record. Fewest points allowed in a championship game. It might have been fewest points allowed in a game period at 3A state in that championship against McCall Donnelly. They put on an all-time defensive clinic. And yet they did lose some guys from that team, right? They lost Jackson Bear, Gatlin Bear. They lost one of the Cummins, but the cupboard's not completely empty. And so Kimberly tabbed as the favorite again in District 4 for Class 3A.
Yeah, and the thing about Kimberly is that is a school that is just going to bring athletes one after the other. I mean, the dynamic and the makeup of that community is so different than some of these other communities. And, Kimberly's a great place just because they just get it done. I mean, it's just one athlete after another there. I mean, you can talk about socioeconomics, you can talk about all this, whatever, but Kimberly's a really cool place because they can continue to do that. Now, I watched them play last night against Jerome, and I tell you what, this team is going to be pretty good. I mean, of course, Darren Gary, who's got about 15 decades of experience coaching, he's going to know how to put it together. But there were some players on that team that are going to make some noise. And I think one kid that stood out to me is Broden Anthony, the sophomore. I mean, that kid just flat out can handle the basketball and get to the rim, and you look at this Kimberly team, once they get kind of playing together, because like you mentioned, they lost a bunch of people. This is a team that can shoot the three. They love to penetrate and get to the rim, and they have some length. And so once they kind of get their season going, keep an eye on Kimberly. This is going to be a really good basketball team.
Yeah, Coach Gary, in our preseason questionnaire we send out to every coach, he sent it back and said, defense is going to be our calling card again. And he said, we want to scramble around to discourage post play is how he put it.
And they do that. They do a really good job of that because they just pass it around the perimeter, penetrate the rim. If you get an open look from the three, they're going to hit it. And defensively, they've got some length, like I said, and they're going to keep teams guessing offensively. So, I mean, keep your eye on Kimberly.
For sure. So Kimberly picked to win the league again. Buhl was picked second. Filer was picked third. To me, Buhl and Filer kind of on equal footing. I think they both have potential. Both have great coaches. Dan Wynn for Buhl, Rob Anderson for Filer. What do you make of second and third?
I saw Buhl play as well. And I know Dan Wynn really well. He's been a close friend of mine for 30 years. And he definitely is a great coach. He is got some size this year. And as I watch them play, they've got some pieces too. I mean, they have a junior transfer in Dominic Pierce. They've got a freshman in Tate Trevino. Both of those guys are really good, but again, it's going to take a little gelling time for that Buhl team to come together. But I think what you got to remember is they do have size. They got 4 dudes that are like over 6 foot, and they can put some size on the floor, whether it's Hunsaker at 6'3", Kelly at 6'2", Sullivan at 6'4", Jackson Allen at 6'5". At the 3A level, you can put your front line that big. Once you get them going together, that could be a tough team to beat because of the 2 guys we just mentioned. That's going to be Tate Trevino and Dominic Pierce, who from the outside, man, you put 3 of those bigs in there with a 2-guard front that can actually score, and you got to pay attention to the perimeter. Buhl is going to make some noise, and Dan Wynn is a good coach, and I think they'll get it together.
Yeah, when Coach Carey from Kimberly said we want to scramble around to discourage post play, he's talking about Buhl.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. But I think what you have to understand too is that people that are looking at records alone, they're not going to get the full story because you want to look at season schedules. Look at Buhl's schedule. They have got an absolute gauntlet of a schedule because I mean those 3A teams here, they play a lot of the 4As that are around here, for obvious reasons, and 4As play the 3As. I mean, we just don't have any 5As around here for the 4As to play. So Jerome 4As are playing Kimberly and they're playing Buhl, and those kind of things. Well, that's great for Kimberly and Buhl and Filer and those kids. But, the Indians, they've got half of their opponents that are on this schedule that played at the state tournament last year, and that's including 3As and 4As. So they play a really tough schedule, and that is going to benefit them down the road. So,
yeah. For Filer, Rob Anderson, head coach there. I got to see Filer play last year at the Preston Indians Classic, the little holiday tournament Preston hosts. Mm-hmm. I got to see Jerome play at that as well, by the way. Jerome won that tournament over Preston in the championship. But I got to see Filer play. They were a team that didn't have any size last year. That was their big problem, is that they just didn't have their tallest, their posts were like 5'10", 5'11", and Joseph Berteo was a great post. If he was 6'2", 6'3", he'd be an all-state type of player. He graduated along with 9 other seniors. So for Coach Anderson, this is kind of a rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, he's got returning juniors in Camas Christensen and Jared Evans, but it's going to be a rebuilding year for Filer. And I tell you what, I've been calling state tournaments for a very long time. And from the boys' side of things, you just don't win a state title unless you have paint presence. I mean, you think about it, people look at all these guard-heavy teams and they think, oh, they're going to be so good, they can shoot the ball. Well, I tell you what, it's not like that every night out. You don't shoot the ball well every single night. But if you're playing in the paint, it's a heck of a lot easier to convert those shots than on the perimeter. And plus, on top of that, you look at a state tournament, you're playing out of your normal gym, and that's where you're used to shooting. Well, paint presence negates that. And so all the tournaments that I've covered, the teams that have succeeded have had paint presence. Okay. And so just keep that in mind as you move forward with these teams, because the ones that are going to last in the end are going to have dudes in the key.
That's right. I mean, Hillcrest won the 4A title with Isaac Davis, just a monster.
Wow.
Down low, being the anchor there for sure. So, and then finally we have Gooding in this conference where, speaking of a presence, they've got a pretty good presence on the sideline in longtime coach Ryan Pope. Now I say long time, not at Gooding, but just he's had a long career in the state of Idaho. He's now the athletic director at Gooding, and he's back coaching basketball on the sidelines as well. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and Ryan was here at Jerome a little bit ago, and got to know him. Matter of fact, his son was my assistant my very first year as AD. So I mean, the Popes are just great people, and Ryan is going to do a good job. I mean, he's got a couple of juniors coming back that he can work with, and Braden Martin and Bryce Patterson. but he's going to have to put his stamp on a 3-19 team that's returning. So they're kind of in a rebuild mode as well. But Coach Pope is a quality dude, and he'll get the most out of him.
Yeah, we need his son Alec is a college student at BYU. We need Alec back in the state of Idaho because he was a broadcaster for us.
Yes,
for IdahoSports.com. So Alec, finish up that degree and come on back. We need you.
Yep, absolutely. And the other son, Micah, was my assistant. So the Popes and Idaho Sports and Jerome and whatever, we all go kind of back with each other. So they're good people.
Definitely. Let's move down to the 2A classification, the Canyon Conference, where we talked about in girls basketball, Declo, Wendell, that's it. Boys basketball, you add a third team in the Cutthroats from the community school of Sun Valley. They were a 1A D2 program last year, Scott, and they almost got to state. They were playing Carey in a game that basically was going to decide that last bid to state, and they had Carey on the ropes. It was a tight game down the stretch, and Sun Valley was like the 8 seed last year. It would have been an ultimate like Cinderella shocker. They fell just short. So now as they move up to 2A, it's a big leap. They leap 2 levels. It didn't hurt them in soccer at all, but we'll see for hoops.
No, I mean, they've got some pretty good culture going on at the community school that they're able to make these transitions. But I mean, this is a conference that has changed a little bit too, because if you remember, Valley was in it last year. And it's all about, getting hot at the right time. And when you talk about the 2A conference in the Magic Valley, it's Wendell and Declo. That's it. Well, in basketball, we've got a couple of different players. Valley last year, who ended up going to state out of this conference, they're gone. They've dropped back down, but to replace them is the Cutthroats. But, you look at for Wendell, let's talk Wendell for a minute. Head coach J.J. Kelsey in his 5th season, they've got some dudes coming back, and I like this team. I mean, they do have Diego Torres is the only returning all-conference player, but, Carson Lemoyne, Justin Egbert, they're going to play key roles for them. And, I mean, this is a team that, they just had a big win over Kimberly?
They beat Kimberly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, I mean, that's huge. So this Wendell team is going to be really, really good. I mean, Declo, they lost 4 all-conference players last season. So I think when you look at this thing, it's Wendell's to lose. But you never look – the community school, boy, what a big question mark that is.
Yes, for sure. So, with Wendell, they got to state 2 years ago, Scott, and I was broadcasting the 2A state tournament for IdahoSports.com. So I got to know Coach Kelsey, and who was on his staff. He had 5 or 6 assistant coaches. It seemed like looked like an NBA team, but Ryan Pope and Micah Pope were both assistant coaches for him 2 years ago at Wendell, and they got to state, won in the opening round and got to the semifinals on really nasty defense. They basically defended the perimeter and said, we dare you to let it fly. And it's those tenets that still exist there for Wendell. So I do like this Wendell team. They're 3-0 against 3A opponents. American Falls, a 3-point win. Kimberly, a 3-point win. And then they just beat Gooding last night by 30, 46-16. So we talk about winning against bigger competition helps, but winning close games, especially early in the season, helps as well, because you learn how to play and execute in tight situations.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, the worst thing you can do as a team is just blaze through your season and not get challenged, not get beat, because then you don't know how to handle adversity. You don't know how to win tight ones. You don't know how to, take the shot. I mean, I was talking to some kids about a game that everybody was hot, and I'm like, well, you shoot the ball a whole lot differently when you're up 20 than when you're down 1, so make those shots when you're down 1 and let's see if it's the same thing, so that's exactly what you need. Close games do more for you than anything else.
Yep. All right, let's go to 1A D1, the Snake River Conference, where in our preseason coaches poll, and by the way, you can look at the preseason coaches polls for every conference in the state of Idaho on our website, IdahoSports.com. It's on the homepage. You got to scroll down a little bit past all the great wrestling coverage we have, but it's there. And then also we've got boys basketball previews for every conference in the state as well. And that's right smack dab at the top of the homepage at IdahoSports.com. So you can get all your season preview stuff there. In this conference, we talked about it in football. We talked about it in girls basketball last week. Carey is the storyline, moving up from 1A D2. They're a perennial state participant. Dick Simpson has taken that team to state, I feel like, the last 30 years. I mean, it's got to be they've got one of the longest active streaks of going to state. And now here they are moving up a level, picked to finish in a tie for first in the preseason coaches poll, along with Lighthouse Christian.
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird conference now because it doesn't look the same as it did last year. I mean, there are 4 new teams in this conference, including Valley that we just got done talking about, Carey. But yeah, you talk about Carey, and you just can't talk about Carey without just saying they know how to win. I mean, we talked about it in football all the time. We talk about it in basketball. I mean, this is a school that just knows how to get it done. They're these hard-nosed, country boys that just get it done. And I've gone off on tangents on all of our podcasts, it seems like, about kind of the makeup and the Americana and all that kind of stuff. Carey's it, man. And so they've got a couple of good players coming back. I mean, Carson Perks, Connor Simpson, they're going to lead the way. And I think they're going to make some noise. And they're picking up kind of where they left off in football too. They're very successful. Football tends to set the stage for a lot of the boys' sports moving forward. And when you're successful in football, it just feeds everything else coming after it.
Yeah, so it's going to be really fun to see how Carey competes. Lighthouse is the team that was also picked to tie for first. I got to see Lighthouse last year at state. They went on a run and got to state and went 2-0. But Lighthouse Christian's got some fun athletes. Jack DeYoung. They've got a really awesome point guard, real slick ball handler. Yamada, Hayato Yamada. He was so fun to watch last year at state. Lighthouse Christian is working in a new head coach this year. They had Mike Brown. He had to leave the team midway through the season. Daquan Montreal ended up taking over the team, in January. He's now gone. He went back to, is it CSI?
CSI. He's assistant athletic director now at CSI.
Yeah. So, Lighthouse has a new AD now in Jesse Clark. He's coaching the girls team. Steve Denny is now coaching the Lighthouse boys. So the admin and the coaches are all different, but a lot of the athletes are the same, and that bodes well, I think, for Lighthouse.
Oh, no question about it. I think one thing that Lighthouse has working in their favor is they've got depth. They've got a lot of guys that they can just put onto the floor. And a lot of times in these 1A conferences, you don't have a lot of dudes. And if one dude goes down, it affects everything. And so obviously with any team at any level, it's going to be your injuries and staying healthy. But a lot of times you see teams that are really good until you get to their bench. And then it's like, man, if I can foul a kid out, or if a kid gets hurt or whatever, and they have to go to their bench, man, we have a huge advantage. Well, I think Lighthouse has enough depth that they're gonna hang around, and that's gonna keep legs fresh, and that's gonna keep people healthy when they're not going 48 minutes. So I think that's the one thing that Lighthouse has. I mean, they've got junior Sam Rogers, Jack DeYoung, and then you mentioned Yamada. I mean, they're going to have some guys that can flat out score the basketball. So Lighthouse might be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, they got athletes, no doubt about it. Oakley is the reigning conference champ. They were picked to finish third. Oakley and Lighthouse ended up playing in a loser-out game at state last year. And, boy, I'm trying to remember how that went. Oakley, I think, won that game, and then they lost the next game. It was really close either way. Oakley, Cody Beck, the head coach there, his favorite trademark line he likes to tell us is, as long as we can put that orange thing in the orange thing, we'll be all right. And that's always been the thing with Oakley is, can they make enough shots? Because we know they've got the defense. Can the offense provide enough?
Yeah, and Oakley's one of those teams that are going to be perennial favorites to win the conference. I mean, they're returning a lot of dudes. They've got 5 key players coming back, including seniors Porter Pickett, William Pregetzer, Keyshawn Crocker, juniors Isaac Cranny and Bridger Duncan coming back. But they've got size, they've got speed, they've got depth. And this is a team that Coach Beck can put and play up to 10 guys, in a game. I mean, most teams, even at the 4A level, you're 7 deep. You get into that 10th dude, you're either getting blown out or you're blowing somebody out. For Coach Beck, I mean, he has got some depth that he can normally play 10 guys in a game that can all produce for him. So, I think Oakley is primed to win the conference if they can stay healthy. But man, what a solid team coming back for Oakley.
Yeah, they were picked to finish third. Valley was picked to finish fourth, and we know what kind of program Valley has with Coach Hardy year in, year out. Won the 2A conference last year. Now they're at the 1A D1 level. They're the only undefeated team still. Valley off to a 4-0 start, including a win over Oakley by a final of 55-37 last night. Now, that was a non-conference game. That doesn't count in the conference standings because the league is so big. Only the second matchup between every team will count. But Valley's good, but people are probably going to go, boy, Oakley, yeah, they just don't have it this year. They're still getting their basketball legs under them. They went on a deep run in football where they won the championship, and then it's basically right into basketball, whereas Valley's had a little more time to get acclimated to round ball. So the early season results for Oakley, I mean, I wouldn't put too much stock into them.
I think you're absolutely right, and people need to remember that, because a lot of these schools that went deep into the state football playoffs, especially these smaller schools, these are the same guys that are playing basketball. They don't have a whole new set of basketball dudes ready for the season. It's the same guys. And so it's going to take them a bit to get going. And then if you've got a situation like you just mentioned to where that first game doesn't matter and you're coming off of all that, I mean, kind of factor that into the equation a little bit as well. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Valley because, Brian Hardy's a heck of a good basketball coach. And, he's got a good player coming back in Kyle Christensen, but he's got a young squad. And they're going to take some time to gel. So, it's tough to put a lot of stock into these early games at this level, especially when you consider what we just talked about.
Yep. I would keep an eye on Valley for sure, though. Kyle Christensen is a difference maker. And then, that was kind of the consensus I got from coaches. Like the top 4, pretty clearly established: Carey, Lighthouse, Oakley, Valley. Line them up in any order. And then, the impression I got was then maybe that's a tier. And then we drop into the next tier, which is basically everybody else, and kind of shake them up and pull them out, and we'll see. Officially in our coaches poll, Castleford was 5th, Raft River 6, Murtaugh 7, Hanson 8, Glens Ferry 9, Shoshone 10. And the difference I would say between the top 4 and the other 6 teams that are in this league is, and you said it earlier, Scott, depth. All of those teams that are in the bottom 6 all have a guy that can go, Bryce Sanford for Murtaugh, Tate Whitaker for Raft River, Benzaval from Shoshone. You talk about Salvador Camarillo for Hanson, but I just don't know that they have the depth that those top 4 teams all have.
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head, because when you look at the different tiers, that top tier, they have that depth. The bottom tier, they're maybe trying to figure out who's going to step in to provide that depth, because I mean, basketball seasons are, they're a long, it's a grind. It is a absolute grind. And if you just have 1 or 2 dudes with no depth, that is going to be a tough deal. So
definitely. I will say Murtaugh. You're good. Murtaugh is off to a 3-1 start with wins over Liberty Charter, Notice, and Rimrock. Those are all teams from District 3. Glens Ferry off to a 2-1 start as well. They've got a new head coach in Jared Lemieux. He had previously been the baseball coach, I believe, at Rimrock, so he's come over to Glens Ferry. So both of those teams are off to nice starts, and we'll continue to monitor them as we go along. We'll wrap up now at the 1A D2 level and the Sawtooth Conference, where, boy, howdy, you better buckle up and strap in, because this is going to be a dogfight all year long. This is a league that gets 1 bid to state, Scott. That's it. And a couple of different coaches in the league told me that Dietrich, Camas County, and Richfield are all among the 8 best teams in 1A D2 basketball this year, and only 1 gets to go to state.
Boy, how unfortunate is that? Because we talk about the 1A conferences, here in the Magic Valley, whether it's football, basketball, whatever, they are dominant, as far as the number of teams that can compete. And this is a conference right now with the teams you just mentioned that, there's going to be a couple of teams staying home that could actually do some damage at the state tournament. And I hate to see that, but that's just the way it is. We talk about Camas County and the year of the musher last year. They get all the way to the state title game and they lost by 2 points to Rockland. But this is a team that's got some players returning. Trey Smith, who was the defensive MVP and all-state tournament team. They've got Tristan Smith, Emmett Palin. They've got some guys returning, and they've also know what it takes to win in a grind of a conference. So that's Camas. But, the Mushers are kind of that defensive-oriented team, and that's what you need. So, and as far as Dietrich, they've got head coach Wendell, who's been there forever, and he definitely knows how to get it done. And, you said that he thinks that the three of the top D2 teams in the state are coming out of this conference, and I would agree with him. We watched Cody Power play state football. Well, he's going to lead their basketball team now. So, excuse me. So they're going to be a team that's going to transition from football to basketball as well. So Hayden Estelle, Lane Dilworth, these guys are all going to be players for him during the season. I'm going to take it over before I.
You're good. You're good. And then Richfield is the third team that could really contend. Clay Kent, Luke Dalton, a fantastic 1-2 punch there for head coach Chris Tabor. And Hagerman's just young. They're a younger team, and it's easy. Hagerman's going to get lost in the shuffle this year because you've got these three giants all playing. But Hagerman has a good chance as well. New coach in Jim Brown. He's also the superintendent there at Hagerman or principal. I can't remember, but he's an admin at Hagerman and coaching the Pirates. They've got Kai Kendall, who's a great sophomore to keep an eye on. And I think when you look at the standings right now, Richfield is 3-0. Camas County is 2-0. Dietrich is 2-1. That is a combined 7-1 amongst the top teams. And all of those have been against 1A D1 competition, so up a level, with the exception of Camas County. Actually, no, Camas County has played two games up as well. So they've beaten teams like Lighthouse, Castleford, Butte County. These are all really good 1A D1 schools. So the proof's in the pudding, at least in the early returns. Camas, Richfield, Dietrich, all outstanding.
Yeah,
so.
and that they're going to have some battles because they know what's at stake, And as far as Hagerman goes, they just have to be in that rebuilding mode to where they're not the doormat of the conference, because they're going to have to make themselves relevant by just playing hard and not getting 30-point run rule, that kind of stuff. Make those other teams play, because like you said, they are going to get lost in the shuffle with the powerhouses they have in this conference. But, this conference right here is going to be one of those things that's going to start an argument. If it shakes out the way that it is supposed to shake out, you're going to have, like I said, two teams that could do damage at the state tournament sitting home, and that's going to start a discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. The discussion's already been happening, over where I live in East Idaho with Preston, Pocatello, Century in basketball at the 4A level, right? And only one of those teams gets to go.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's coming to a head soon, I think. How do we figure this thing out? But we'll see. We'll see how it goes this year. A lot of these Magic Valley teams, Scott, boys and girls, are going to be competing over in Meridian on Saturday, or Boise. The annual small school showcase comes to the Treasure Valley. The boys will play at Mountain View High in Meridian. The girls, I believe this is the first time there's a girls small school showcase. They're going to play at Timberline High over in Boise. Boys teams that are playing. And if you're a basketball fan, like this is your nirvana. The first game on the boys side is at 8:30 in the morning. The last game is at 8:30 at night. It is 10 games all in a row, all featuring 1A schools. So this is good stuff.
That'll be a lot of fun just to sit and watch. And boy, you talk about getting your finger on the pulse of 1A basketball. Just show up there, and then you have all the talking points that you need to have.
That's right.
Because the players are there. If
Yeah.
you can get there at 8:30 in the morning, I'm really curious to see how the players can manage at 8:30 in the morning, but whatever.
Yeah, the first Magic Valley team plays at 10 a.m. That's Dietrich. Dietrich will play Liberty Charter. Then you've got Shoshone will play Wilder. That'll be at 12:30. You'll have Lighthouse Christian play Marsing at 2 o'clock. So I guess Marsing's at 2A, but I think they're the only one. Then you'll have Richfield and Council. That's going to be the game of the night right there. It's Richfield and Council. Council is a heavy favorite over in District 3 this year for 1A D2. Richfield, of course, we talked about. They've got great potential this year. Camas County is going to play North Star Charter. Hanson will play Compass Charter as well at 6:30 or 7 o'clock actually at night. So really good competition on the boys side. And then, on the girls side as well, you've got, Carey's going to be there competing. I know there's going to be some really fantastic games. Let me pull up the schedule for that real quick. So Camas County is going to play Raft River at 1:15 p.m. That's an all Magic Valley matchup there. You will also have, as I mentioned, Lighthouse Christian will be there to play Compass Charter. Hagerman will play Victory Charter. Shoshone will play Liberty Charter. And then Carey is there. They'll be competing as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun for these small schools to go over to Boise and kind of have the day to themselves to highlight what they can do.
Oh, it's going to be tons of fun. And like I said, if you want to know what is going on in 1A basketball, get your butt up there and watch. And then you can see how all these conferences shake out.
Yep. Carey's going to play Tri-Valley. I was struggling to remember their opponent, but Carey will play Tri-Valley at 6:30 in the girls' small school showcase. So, yeah, great weekend of basketball action, and that kind of puts a bow on all of our preview stuff that we're doing here, Scott. So next week we'll get back into the regular flow of, hey, here's 2 or 3, stories, headlines, things we noticed across the entire spectrum of sports, whether it's boys basketball, girls basketball, wrestling. So we'll get back into like the regular routine, but preview season is over, and now it's time to actually start talking about results and things like that. So,
it is. We are going to be in the throes of winter sports before too long. Holiday tournaments coming up. We have the big Tim Matthews wrestling tournament going on here tomorrow and Saturday. So, we talk about these teams starting to flex their muscle and separate themselves, whether it's basketball or wrestling or whatever it is. It's going to start to happen now. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
For sure. And for all the wrestling fans out there in the Magic Valley, friendly reminder, we have launched a standalone wrestling only podcast. Every Tuesday night, we'll go live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. Of course, you can go back and listen the next day as well. It's the Matt Chat Prepcast. It's wrestling only, and we got great reception for our very first show last Tuesday night, Scott. It was a good time. So,
oh, you guys killed it. I mean, that is such an awesome thing, and it's dedicated to a sport that is growing exponentially. It is. I mean, when you factor in the girls now that has their state tournament last year, and all these new schools that are having women's wrestling, and how that sport is growing, man, it's filling a niche, and you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, real quick, you mentioned girls wrestling. Last year at state, they had 8 woman brackets, right? This year, they wanted to expand to 16 competitor brackets for each weight class. And they said, okay, we need at least 600 females competing in wrestling throughout the state to hit that number. Just a couple nights ago, it was announced that they blew past that. We're talking like close to 800 girls wrestling around the state of Idaho. So they're going to expand those brackets to 16 this year. It's so exciting to see for all of the female wrestlers. So,
oh, it is. And I know that at least from my perspective here at Jerome, we started our women's program this year, hired a women's only coach, and we're getting girls out left and right that are excited to be part of it. And a couple of them show up in my office and tell me how tough they are and all this kind of stuff. And it's fun. It's fun to see. They're not shying away from the physicality of wrestling. They're loving it. And so, man, I didn't think it was going to take off and grow like it has, but it certainly is. And it's fun to see.
Yeah, fastest growing sport in the nation is girls wrestling. So a lot of fun there. So yes, you can get your wrestling coverage each week as well on the Matt Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. All right. Thanks for tuning into the Magic Valley Prepcast, everybody. For Scott Burton, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you back here next time on IdahoSports.com.